Hare Krishna. I would like to welcome you all to ISKCON Vaishnavi Ministry North America's Bond of Love interview series. It is my honor and privilege today to welcome Her Grace Mukhya Dasi. Her Grace Mukhya Dasi currently serves as a temple president of ISKCON of Alachua. She joined the Detroit Temple in 1974, where she had visited for the first time in January of that year as part of a class assignment for her studies at the University of Michigan. She got a Bhagavad Gita, read it, and knew that this is what she wanted to study. And by the end of the summer of that year, after visiting various temples around the US, she had moved into the ladies' ashram. She spent many years distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, lived in New Mayapur in France for 3 years, cooked and managed the Govinda's restaurant at the Fisher Mansion in Detroit, and had her own restaurant in Florida, and eventually moved to Alachua in 2007. And since then, since 2008, she has been serving as a temple president of ISKCON of Alachua. So, welcome to Her Grace.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna, welcome. Please accept my humble obeisances. Prabhupada. Very honored to have you here. And thank you so much for accepting the invite to be interviewed for this series where we interview the Vaishnavis who are part of this book, A Bond of Love. So I'd like to start off by asking a little bit about your current service as the Temple President of ISKCON of Alachua.
Well, temple president encompasses so many different aspects of devotional service. Mm-hmm. And I like the service because it's so creative. You have to think on your feet all the time. You have to be responsible for all the different areas of service that we provide, as a temple in ISKCON. It's the biggest community in North America, and it's growing still all the time. We have two very vibrant schools. One is the Bhaktivedanta Academy, which follows, it's a like a parochial school, so it follows its own curriculum as well as the state of Florida. And then we have the Alachua Learning Academy, which is on our property as well. It's a state of Florida school, but it's a charter school. And a lot of the devotees are teachers at that school. So parents have a good choice between two great places to send their children for good association. And the temple is sort of right in the middle of both schools. We also have a lot of Prabhupada disciples have settled here over the years. It's a very beautiful place to live. We're in a sort of a rural setting, but not too far away from a big university. So it's an interesting place. There's Krishna consciousness has been here since 1977. In fact, this piece of land was the last piece of land that was purchased while Srila Prabhupada was on the planet. And it was actually signed, the closing papers were signed the day Prabhupada departed. So we consider this the last gift of Prabhupada to the devotees. And I think we're fulfilling that mission, that he would like to see for this big, beautiful rural property. We have cow protection, we have organic farming, we have an eco farm to teach ecological concepts of farming and natural building. We have very big festivals and vibrant deity worship. It's sort of I would say the hub or the center of the heart of the whole community is our beautiful deities, Radhesham, Krishna Balaram, and Gaurnitai. And we have many generations of Hare Krishna devotees. It's such an honor to see families and their children and then their children's children all staying in the same community just because they like to be around each other. No one's forcing them to stay in this little insignificant part of the world, but everyone likes the family mood and the family group. So it is a very strong family atmosphere, I would say, in Alachua, and the devotees are very into helping each other, serving each other, looking after each other. And since we have so many Prabhupada disciples here, also that's a big need because we're all entering that phase of life where, Prabhupada said, don't think this will happen to you. Don't think this won't happen to you. Happening to us, this sort of an aging process. And we like to look after each other as best we can during these times.
Mm. Such a vibrant community. It sounds like I'd like to visit there sometime.
Yeah, you should.
One thing I was thinking as you were speaking, these different generations of devotees, and the common thread is, of course, Srila Prabhupada for all of us. And I wanted to also start off this series by asking you, are there any special, are there any, I'm sure there's many things, but some things that comes to your mind that you're especially grateful to Srila Prabhupada for?
Well, I mean, I'm grateful to Srila Prabhupada for my life, for everything in my life. And in fact, every night before I go to sleep, just to calm my typically overactive mind, I'll just lay there and think of something that I'm grateful for that day.
Mm.
And when I think of Srila Prabhupada, I just think of the friends that I have. I mean, I have wonderful, wonderful friendships I wouldn't have without having Prabhupada in my life. I have a purpose in life. I'm so grateful for that, because every person, on this earth wants to have a purpose. They want to be, be meaningful and be important to someone else. And the Krishna conscious life is a very purposeful life. So I'm very grateful to Prabhupada for giving us purpose. And of course, my family. I have a small family right now. It's just me and my son, who's 45 years old, and my grandchildren. But even my next extended family, the family of devotees, and even my own family that I grew up with, because I'm a devotee, they've been touched by Krishna consciousness too. Even my parents have passed on, but even they were touched by Krishna at the time of their passing, because I was there and I was able to chant for them. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if it wasn't for Prabhupada. So I feel incredibly grateful to have been able to do that for them. I have very nice parents. I'm very, very attached to them. So to be able to do something meaningful for them was just amazing for me. That's because of Prabhupada. And I have siblings, and even though they're not devotees, they love me. So they appreciate Prabhupada and Krishna just by loving me. So, all those things, when you see all the ways that this mercy extends through you and, and touches everything in your life, you have to be very grateful. Prabhupada took away, he said, you can't, if you're holding on to something, you can't give someone something else. You have to remove the thing they're holding and then give them something better. And he just was able to extricate us from material life and give us this beautiful Krishna conscious life. And then it's just blossomed, for all of us into this amazing lifestyle that we have.
Wow. Being an instrument of Krishna and touching other lives this way. And we talked about relationships and purpose, such gifts from Prabhupada.
Yes.
And we can see that same gratitude and the depth, the feelings in these offerings in this book as well. So I want to ask you, why did you choose to participate in this book, The Bond of Love?
Well, I mean, I participated because I was asked to. So if someone wants me to do some service, then I want to try to do that. And I saw the importance of this. I read like in Malati's introduction, she was from a generation of devotees, the very first devotees. They were very instrumental in assisting Prabhupada. And they were also more affected by the marginalization of women within the movement. By the time I became a devotee, I felt it was a little bit less. I didn't have such an intense feeling of that, maybe just because my nature, or because I was in a temple where that wasn't really a big issue. But we're all sort of subject to the conditioning, right, that we grew up with. And it's in the spiritual societies and in the material societies, women tend to be pushed into the margins. And she could see that, and she felt that there were so much great experiences and realizations of her god sisters that she wanted people to hear. And I think for men and women of other generations to hear the way women experienced their relationship with Prabhupada, it is a different expression of experience than a man would have. That's normal. Women express things differently. And just by her associating with her god sisters and talking just about things about Krishna consciousness, she realized these things have to be heard by other people. So I'm really, I was so moved by this book when I read all these beautiful expressions of love and realization and the depth of the experience for these women, how it impacted them. And some of it was so funny and so fun, really, to read about too. And every single person has a different experience with Prabhupada. So you want to learn every single experience you possibly can, because it's so multifaceted and it's so interesting.
Yeah.
So I just participated in the book, not because I thought I had so much to add to it, really, but because she asked me to just give my expression and my experience of the relationship with Prabhupada. So all the disciples, every disciple of every spiritual master can say something about their spiritual master that was important to them, change their life. So how could I say no?
And we are grateful for this effort, because this is for posterity, for all of us to
Yes.
read who haven't met Prabhupada. And, it's like a bouquet with many fragrant flowers, and the variety brings in a beautiful bouquet. So you did allude to it, but I was wondering, are there any particular things that you took away from Vaishnavi's story from this book? Any particular memory?
Well, I don't know if I can remember that well, any particular memories, but I was really touched by a lot of shared experience, like things that I experienced, I see other women also experienced with Prabhupada. And that was very reaffirming to me. So just the way the relationship with Prabhupada has grown and aged beautifully. Like when I had just turned 21 when I joined the temple. So, I was so naive and clueless, really. It's hard to garner all the mercy that I was being given. But as you get older and as you participate more in Krishna conscious service, in devotional service, then it goes deeper and deeper. And over the years, even when Prabhupada was gone, most of us experienced Prabhupada more deeply after he wasn't here, because we were growing, we were getting older, we were practicing Krishna consciousness more and more years. And I saw that was a very shared experience with a lot of women, that even with Prabhupada gone, we began to know him better.
We could go on and on about Prabhupada, but I was wondering, is there any favorite quality of Prabhupada that you could talk about?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I think for me, the most amazing thing to experience in Srila Prabhupada was that he wasn't conditioned. So, all of us are conditioned by our, the place we grow up, the culture we grow up in, the family we grow up in, and then the greater society that we're part of. It's hard to separate from your conditioning, really. I mean, we try to, and there's like a part of our brain that says, we're not this body, and we know that we're spirit soul, but there's another part of our brain that thinks, I'm a Jewish girl from New York and I have a certain way of looking at things, or, whatever it is. And Prabhupada came from a culture that was very caste oriented, and those things become sort of part of your outlook on life. But Prabhupada was not conditioned by his surroundings. So when you experienced him, you experienced that. So, devotees might come to Prabhupada with conflicts with each other because they're from different cultures, or they weren't relating so well to each other, or they were feeling belittled, or they were experiencing some of the cultural background that they were brought with them. But Prabhupada wasn't conditioned by any of these things. He didn't act according to any prescribed pressures, societal pressures. He was very unique in his adherence to just Krishna consciousness of Krishna. And he brought that into everything he did. So it was, it was very remarkable to see a person like that. And the very gentle and compassionate way he could bring you out of your conditioning to experience, your life without that. And it's not like, well, at least for me, I mean, it's pretty hard to break away from these things, but every now and then you can get a glimpse of this, what it could be like. And I mean, it creates a very beautiful society when we act, we can act outside of our conditioning. And Prabhupada was teaching us how to be like that, just watching him, how he reacted to situations, how he was as a person.
Since you were talking about how Prabhupada would react to situations and how he wasn't conditioned, I was wondering if there are any instances you can remember where you saw Prabhupada adjust to time, place, and circumstance, or in his dealings with devotee versus non-devotee, anything like that?
Well, I wasn't a person who had so much close association with Prabhupada, but I did one time, I talked about this in the memories that, I brought my mother-in-law to meet him when he came to Detroit. And when I brought her to the room was full of devotees, and nobody was going to make a space for us. It was a very small apartment in a very small room, and everyone was so excited to be there with Prabhupada. And, here I brought my mother-in-law. She was very attractive, middle-aged woman, dressed very nicely. And she just came because we asked her to come. And she had a basket of fruit for Prabhupada. But when he looked up from the desk and saw us at the doorway, he immediately put a huge smile on his face, like he was so pleased to see someone's mother come. And he invited her to come right in, right up to him. She gave him the basket. He was so appreciative. And then we sat right there near him. So he was incredibly expert because he knows deeply every person and their heart, their intention, and so forth. So he knew just how to get the right lessons across to each person. And with her, he was such a gentleman and so kind and so open-hearted. And then you could see sometimes in these recordings, where he might be speaking to a priest, or he might be speaking to or another, so-called spiritual leader, even, and he could be heavy. He could give to you what you needed to hear when you needed to hear it. He could be both loving and heavy. But with the devotees, you knew his intention was always to lift you up, whatever that meant, whatever that took.
Yeah, we hear that about as Krishna's quality, right? Like even if he kills demons, it is for the upliftment of that entity, and it's a blessing. It's never a punishment. And I'm hearing that something similar from you. So if you could only share one thing about Prabhupada to anyone, what would that be?
Well, there's so many things. It's hard to say one, but Prabhupada taught by example. That's what Acharya means. He was impeccable in everything he did. So he asked us to be regulated. He asked us to get up early. He asked us to put service to Krishna above everything else. But he asked us to be kind to each other and to, take care of our health and so forth. But he was such a perfect example. So to me, that's just such a stellar quality and an experience that, it's something that we want to try to strive for in our life, to incorporate his example into our behavior and the way we are. It's not that easy. It's not easy for me, to have compassion for every person and try to have understanding. We have, everyone is so unique. So, but I think the way Prabhupada taught by example and the way, I don't know anybody who can do that, just put everything aside for his mission, for what he had a purpose. He came with this purpose, the mission of his spiritual master, and he just focused 100% on that mission, and he never wavered. So maybe we can't do it 100%, but we can just always be striving to get there. And that's just one thing. There's so many things. Prabhupada was, he wrote so brilliantly, incredible mastery of English. Like, no one can write the way he wrote, and what he's teaching is the highest truths. So it isn't like he's writing a great novel or a fiction. This is, he's imparting great spiritual truths with the most beautiful English prose. And so take advantage of that. He gave it to us. Even if we can't read a lot, if we can read, everyone can read a little. Everyone can just open a book every single day, and whatever it opens to, read that book and see if there's something there for you. Because he wanted us to. I mean, he told us the basic things he wanted us to be doing: reading the books, distributing the books, distributing prasadam, attending the spiritual programs, chanting deeply and meaningfully our japa. These are things that are there to help us. So we have to try to follow his example as much as we can.
Thank you.
Or more than we can.
How did Srila Prabhupada engage you in Krishna service in the initial days?
Well, I mean, initially I was just engaged by my temple authorities, who I'm presuming were, somehow getting the direction of the spiritual master. I did a lot of different things. I distributed Prabhupada's books for some time. I learned to cook. I like to meet people at the Sunday feast, like try to bring new people into Krishna consciousness to help them understand who we are and just be friendly with people. I used to do food distribution and take meals out to people in the projects in Detroit. Just different things. But as I, over the years, I've done different things. I've had businesses, and I've learned things through my businesses. And I feel like ultimately everything that I've done somehow has given me a little more education to utilize in my service now. And if I'm always praying to Prabhupada to be useful to him. I don't know how to do anything, honestly, and I'm not very scholarly, so I just pray to be useful, and then I feel 100% confident that he will do that. He will engage me in some way. So now he's engaged me like this, temple president of this place, and I'm still doing it. So I guess that's what he wants. I assume that when he doesn't want it anymore, he'll let me know. But you can't do this service, probably any service, without help from Prabhupada. There's no question that, I don't think I'm moving, these mountains from right to left. He's doing everything, but he's just using us to do it. You definitely palpably experience that.
The fact that you've been in it for 50 odd years and taken upon responsibility after responsibility speaks of your connection with Srila Prabhupada. So I wanted to ask you, how has this relationship with Srila Prabhupada deepened over these years? Any practices that you do, or anything in particular you can share with us?
Well, I think just by engaging in bhakti, your relationship with your guru deepens. I think there's a kind of symbiotic, thing that's happening. As you do service, you're coming closer to your guru. As you come closer to your guru, you're doing more service. So, the more you stay regulated, the more you, and that can, you can be regulated in many different ways. It doesn't have to just be one way, but the more you, engage in serving the devotees, especially, the more, you get a deeper relationship little realizations come. It's like the little peeling away of the layers. And, Prabhupada said you have to be the servant of the servant of the servant. So if you can try to do that, just serve the devotees, you'll see a lot of benefit, a lot of realization, a lot of connection to Prabhupada in your life.
Simple and sublime process.
Yeah, it is simple if you can just get over yourself and do it.
So do you believe that it is important for the next generation devotees, not Prabhupada disciples, but like devotees like us, to develop a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada? And if yes, why and how do we do it?
Well, it's imperative. It isn't just important. It's part of this process. Every single person should read at least Lilamrita. And if you read Lilamrita, then you may want to, necessarily read more memoirs. All the memoirs written by all the first generation of devotees are incredibly rich and valuable. They're fun to read, and there's so much there of like this personal interactive experience, because Prabhupada was a real person, and he gave up a lot to come here to spread this mission. And then, of course, for coming to America from here, he went all over the world, including back to India. So this was amazing what he did. And you won't really get to know the depth of how incredibly hard it was unless you read about his life. And it's very important that you understand that, to think of someone coming from, the hub of the spiritual world, Radha Damodar Temple, to, the Bowery of New York City, with people who didn't know the first clue about spiritual life, and making them into amazing devotees of Krishna. He just opened them up. He just cracked them open. And then, of course, it just grew and grew and grew. But you have to understand who Prabhupada was, what he taught, how he did it, and how revolutionary he was, to really understand this movement. When he didn't just bring the Vedas, he brought the teachings to this time and place, that we're living in right now. He brought it to everybody. He didn't just bring it to some people. He brought it to everybody in every country, in every part of the world. He was equal like that to everyone. You have to read about him, his life, the things he did, the way he opened temples, the way he, engaged people. You'll learn all that in all these books. Bond of Love, certainly, all the memoirs. Yeah. And they're fabulous books. They're wonderful. They're easy reads. They're fun to read. You can read them with your children. You can read them with your reading groups. You can read them yourself. If you give yourself some time every single day, even just a few minutes, even to read, you'll just gain so much understanding of Prabhupada, so much love for him.
Yeah.
I talked there's a devotee who visits our temple. I think he's from Chicago. Every few times a year, maybe. He's a book distributor, so he's always traveling, only traveling. And this last time he came, I'm sure he's been a devotee for 10 years at least. I don't know, but he said he just read Lilamrita for the first time. Oh, his mind was blown. He just couldn't believe all the things I went through. And I'm like, wow, 10 years you're a devotee, and now you're just learning this. This should be required reading for every new person. Yeah, it's very, very important, because if we lose connection with that, with the way Prabhupada did things and how he saw things, it won't be his movement. It won't be, you'll be losing that parampara connection. Be careful about that. So you can do that by just really studying who Prabhupada was, and you can study who he was through all these beautiful books that his disciples have written.
Well, I know of at least one temple that has Prabhupada Lilamrita as one of their prerequisites for first initiation.
That's very good. I'm going to do that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the last few questions. I know your time is of essence. You manage large temples. So I have just a couple of more.
Okay.
Um, you've talked a lot about Srila Prabhupada, but I just wanted to ask one more time just to get deeper into this topic is that what about Srila Prabhupada convinced you to dedicate your life now, even after so many years? And
Well, I think when I first dedicated myself to Krishna consciousness, I don't know that it was specifically Prabhupada. It was the whole mood of the temple. I loved the family mood. I loved how personal the devotees were. I loved Bhagavad Gita. As I think I mentioned I think you mentioned when you introduced me that I had read the Bhagavad Gita before I came to the temple, and it was so amazing to me that I realized so many questions that I might have had just in general about life were answered, that I wanted to stay and just really study the Bhagavad Gita. But I hadn't met Prabhupada. I didn't meet him for probably a year until after I was living in the temple. So, but the more, the more you engage in service, the more you read his books, the more you associate with devotees, then you get to learn more and more and just love him more and more. And when you realize, who he is, what he's doing, what he can do for you, what's the purpose of life, and how to attain the end goal. You can't attain the end goal without Prabhupada. It's not possible. You can't get to Krishna without the spiritual master. So that was convincing. Yes, let me follow this person because he knows everything. He had a lot of he was convincing in the way he lived his life, in the breadth of his knowledge, and nobody could ever ask him a question that he couldn't answer. And he could answer the questions very specifically to that person that was asking. And if you read, we used to have little cassettes, that's how we would hear Prabhupada's lectures. So, you know what a little cassette is, those little square that stick in a little box. And we would listen to them constantly. Like when I first walked into the temple, there was lectures of Prabhupada playing. There was nobody around, but the lectures were just playing. And he had a pretty strong accent. But somehow I could just understand. And, I think to have Prabhupada's sound vibration always playing, even if maybe you're not concentrating, but maybe you're just cooking dinner or doing the laundry or, in the car or, just the times where you're not actually sitting down and taking notes, and just let that permeate your whole, the whole energetic field around you. It makes a big difference in your life. So the more you associate with Prabhupada, the more you're convinced of how important that association is, the more you want it.
So many takeaway points for us. One last question, and I think you perhaps might have spoken a little bit to it before as well. How do you manage this large community, large temple? How have you been doing it?
Well, as I said, you do get a lot of help from Krishna and Prabhupada, and little things like I'm forgetting something and I'm walking out the door, and then Krishna's like, you left your phone, you left your something, you left your notes, the little things that come in the heart and talk to you. And, I have a great team of devotees that work with me. You have to have a team. You have to know how to make a team and keep a team, because nothing gets done by one person. No, never. You have to have a great group of people who are willing. Devotees are volunteers. They're not even getting paid to do this. And it is a lot of work. When you have 3 sets of big deities and you have many offerings a day to cook, and you have to feed people breakfast and lunch, and you have to take food out to the campus to feed those students lunch, and you have to put on big festivals. I mean, it's just constant, output of energy and cleaning up after that output of energy and then doing it again the next day. You have to have a great team of people who enjoy devotional service. So that's how you do it. You find the people and get them ready to go. You have to keep people enlivened somehow, because without the other devotees, there's nothing. You have to have, it has to be a group effort.
Okay. Well, we have one live comment from Stella. She says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Prabhupada. So I believe we touched on many things, from your service to Srila Prabhupada, his unlimited transcendental qualities. We've talked about how to bring bhakti into our life, reading and hearing Prabhupada, like you said, keeping that vibration going, even when we are doing our daily chores and things like that. So you've given us a lot to savor and think about, and we are very honored and grateful that you chose to spend this half an hour, 40 minutes with us this evening. And like I said, this truly is invaluable, to get memories from devotees like you who are associated with Prabhupada, and keep this, this is for posterity. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for doing this, Varshana, and also Radhapriya in the background organizing all this. And I hope that all the different disciples of, who of Srila Prabhupada, all the daughters, you could say, will also participate in this, because every single devotee has a unique perspective and some sweet nectar to share. And these are the things that enliven us, so much. That's why we love Association of Devotees, because there's always some little gem or some little instruction just for you that comes out of that association. And that's another thing that just propels you forward, really helps.
Absolutely. Yes. So we also urge all the viewers to share this with your friends so that we can all benefit from these memories of Srila Prabhupada. And thank you so much, Mukhya dasi.
Hare Krishna.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyavacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo
Namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.